Take us just a moment. And it says we're live, so I'm going to trust it.
All right.
So, hello. Welcome to the Escondido Public Library Virtual Author Chat Series. Today's chat is in partnership with Mysterious Galaxy Bookstore. We are your hosts for today. I'm Jessica Buck, Adult Services Librarian.
And I'm Kristine Mirate, Children's Librarian. And today we are joined by author Kaela Rivera. Yay!
Hello!
Kaela Rivera was raised to believe in Will-o'-the-Wisp and El Chupacabra, but even ghost stories couldn't stop her from reading in the isolated treetops, caves, and creeks of Tennessee's Appalachian forests. She still believes in the folktales of her Mexican, American, and British parents, but now she writes about them from the adventure-filled mountains of the Wild West. When she's not crafting stories, she's using her English degree from BYU-I as an editor for a marketing company, or secretly doodling her characters in the margins of her books. Yes. Her debut novel, Cece, Rios and the Desert of Souls, is out. Woo. Her biggest hope is to highlight and explore the beauty of cultural differences and how sharing those differences can bring us all closer.
Yay! I'm so excited. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
And I want everyone watching to know that we're going to be monitoring the comments. So if you have any questions, just pop those in and we'll get to those as they come. And to remind you that you can purchase book by the author from Mysterious Galaxy. And since today is Indie Bookstore Day, as part of the San Diego Book Crawl, when you purchase anything from Mysterious Galaxy, you can get some exclusive items while they last. So don't miss out. You should go do that. The link to where you can buy the book is in the description of the video. So before we get to all of the questions that we have, Kaela will be reading a short little excerpt from her book. And I'm going to make you big.
Yay! Thank you, everyone, for coming. Thank you so much. I'm really excited to share with you the very first chapter of Cece Rios in the Desert of Souls. So sit back and let me read you a little bit. Chapter 1, The Criatura of Progeny and Stars. I was 7 years old when I met my first criatura. I was wandering through the cerros, the hills of the desert beyond town, at night, barely avoiding low heads of cactus. In the dark, their spines looked more menacing than they did under the sun. But then, I was a child. Everything looked menacing in the dark. I was lost. No matter where I turned, I couldn't see the light of town. The other children had left me hours ago. I should have gone home with them, but I'd wanted to watch the sunset by myself. I should have known better. It was winter, and with winter came danger. Not because of the cold, but because it was los meses de la criatura, the criatura months. Since before I could remember, Mama had taught me the legends of the criaturas. They were creatures unlike humans, children of the desert goddess, who the great namer created from dust and words. Mama taught me the difference between animal criaturas, who were made to fill the desert, and dark criaturas, who were made to attack the descendants of the sun god, us. But her advice for dealing with both types was the same. You must steal their souls and command them to leave you, she'd always said, for you cannot outrun a criatura once it sets its sights on you. Her words seemed to wrap around my throat as I turned in the darkness, trying to find the distant outline of my town. Are you lost, human child? I gasped and whirled around, clutching my shirt. Out of the shadows cast by the hill, a creature slipped into view. She walked forward on legs of flesh, just as smooth and brown as anyone's in town. Her skirt was bright with reds and greens and blues. Her headdress shimmered with sleek owl and quetzal feathers to match, and its ornate moonstone beads swayed from side to side. But from the waist up, she was bones. My voice froze in my throat. Her face was a skull, her jaw hanging just slightly open as if ready to speak. Her eyes were empty black sockets, but I could feel them on me. I met their gaze, craning my head back in silent terror as she stopped in front of me. It was Tzitzimitsu, the Criatura of stars and devouring, a dark Criatura. Her lanky shadow fell over me in stripes, the gaps in her rib bones letting through beams of moonlight. Her jaw opened and a voice came out of the motionless cavity. You are far from where your people dwell in the once great city of Tierra del Sol. Surely you are lost. My heart hammered so loudly I was sure Tzitzimitsu would hear it and try to bite it out of my chest. I crossed my arms over myself and stumbled back a few steps. Don't eat me! I turned to run, but bony fingers wrapped around my shoulder before I got the chance. Tzitzimitsu's strength was irresistible. You do not want to wander through Mother Desert's land alone, human child, she said. Here, criaturas roam freely for 2 more months, and La Llorona is loose in your world right now. She will drown you, or snake criaturas will eat you. I shook under her grasp. Please, I just want to go home. She cocked her skull and her headdress shifted so its metallic stars clattered. I will take you home. She offered her bony hand. I stared at the fingers. Don't you know you can trust me, human child? I am Tzitzimitsu, the great namer, made me the protector of human children. Mama had always said that the criaturas would kill me. La Llorona would drown children in rivers, and Golden Eagle would snatch us away in his talons. El Sombreron would steal daughters from their families, and the gray wolf would feast on the lost. But wouldn't Tzitzimil have hurt me by now if she were bad? Slowly, I put my hand in hers. Her bones closed over my soft skin carefully, and she led me in a new direction. What is your name, human child? She asked as we wandered between scrub and cacti. I stared up at her. She wore a necklace that flashed in the moonlight. The simple stone on leather swung with every step we took. Cece. Cece Rios. Another Rios, she said. I believe humans carrying their names from one mother to another, correct? Your family has a history with criaturas then. Do you know of Katrina Rios? In Devil's Alley, they call her Katrina, cager of souls. Mama had mentioned her once, but she hadn't been very happy about it. Is she my mom's sister, my tia? I do not know your mother. She pulled me sideways before I could step on a sleeping snake. But you share a last name and you have her eyes. Perhaps she is your tia, though I do not think you share the same heart. Okay. Thanks for indulging me, everybody.
No, that was wonderful. I was getting really into it.
You know, me too.
Okay. I mean, that's what I like to hear.
That's awesome. Yeah,
Yeah, the details. I can just so imagine it being a movie. Like, it's just with all the visuals when you're describing it.
I would love that. I mean, I would also love a movie for this. So. I mean, I when I was writing it, it even felt that way. You know, it's just like I'm watching it and I'm just like sitting behind the scene as it's happening, just writing it down. Like, keep talking. It's okay.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think that can lead us well into our first question, which is, tell us a little bit about what inspired this book.
Okay, yeah. So I wrote Cece Rios in the Desert of Souls, the first draft in 2016. And that had been very recently. I had gone and visited my abuelo, who I had not had very often in my life. Like, we lived really far away. I lived in Tennessee, he lived in California, you know, completely across country, basically. Yeah. But, you know, I knew of him and I loved him, but I'd never gotten to spend like a large amount of time with him, not since I was a little kid. So one winter break in college, I was like, hey, you know what? Idaho's a lot closer to California than Tennessee is to California. So I decided to make my way there, hitch a ride with a friend who was going in California somewhere to hitch a ride with my tias, and then go spend time with my abuelo. And it ended up being a really great experience because I ended up like really getting to connect with my Mexican heritage, which I really hadn't before. And like, it's not like I had ever avoided it. I just hadn't had the opportunity mostly. So it was like I really got to sink in. When we were speaking Spanish to each other, because my abuelo, like he's a little bit older now, he doesn't use English as much. He doesn't have as much reason to. But I'm like, hi, I speak English and like 5 Spanish words, And so that whole 2 weeks we were like learning like how to talk to each other. It was so fun actually. Like because we could Spanglish and it was great. I learned so much more Spanish during that visit than like any other time in my life. It was awesome. And then after that, I just sort of took all of those things with me and started researching more about Mexico, about like the world that my abuelo had grown up in. He told me so many stories. I had written them down because I was like, this is awesome and I want to keep it forever. And then after I graduated college, I didn't have a job yet. Well, technically I'd gotten hired, but then it fell through, that kind of thing. So I had time on my hands. It was November, so it was NaNoWriMo, and I was like, what if I took 2 things I really love, which one of them was this idea I'd had about what if people had souls on the outside? I'd been pondering that and trying to make that work in a story for a while. I was like, what if I take that idea and I took the Northern Mexico like setting inspiration, like folklore stories about like that my abuelo had told me, and I put them together the same thing. And then I was like, El Sombreron, stealing a sister. What greater motivation is there for any great story, than saving your family? And I was like, oh, and then hammered out like 10,000 words in a sitting, which was exhausting, but I was so empowered by like my excitement that I was just like, I don't care that it's 3 a.m. So yeah, I guess it would be just a mixture of reconnecting with my Mexican heritage, of my abuelo's personal experience of growing up in northern Mexico, and about wondering how would we treat each other's souls if we could see them? Like kind of a merging of all those 3 things, I guess, is what inspired this book.
That's really awesome.
I love that. And we have a comment from Angela, and she loved the reading, and she thinks that you should do an audio version. And I agree.
It actually is an audiobook. And Almari Guerra, if you liked my version, Almari Guerra does like a full performance. So I cried actually during chapter 3, listening to her voice Juana when she's getting stolen. I was like, so I was like right outside a mall and everything. I was like going into sign books in a second, like, this is not good. So I highly recommend it if you're interested. But also thank you.
So as we mentioned, the book just came out. It is fresh in the world. Yes. And I was peeking at all the reviews and how people are just so excited about it. And it already has the JLAG Gold Standard selection, and it's a Kirkus Star review. So how does all of that feel from us listening to you talk about how it's like from talking with like your family and reconnecting to your roots? Like, is it just like the most just amazing?
I mean, yeah, that's a good word for it. It has been stunning and surprising and has mostly just filled me with gratitude throughout like every step of the way. Because like I was always like, getting a Kirkus Star, that's an author goal one day, kind of thing. Because I was like, I'm a debut author, nobody knows me, whatever, like not expecting it, and then when I got the news for the Junior Library Gold Standard, admittedly I didn't know what it was at first. I was like, it sounds great, tell me what it is. There's been so many things since becoming a published author that I was like, I thought I knew a lot and I don't. So I've learned a lot on the way, and I'm sure there's plenty more I don't know, but I'm excited to learn. And once I found out the Junior Library Gold Standard, what it was, I was extremely excited, burst through like my family's doors, like their bedrooms. I was like, guess what? I need you to stop what you're doing and be excited with me. But I was mostly excited because I was like, oh, then libraries will carry it. And as a kid, like we weren't exactly wealthy, we didn't have much money growing up. So the library was important to me. So knowing that it would pique more libraries' interest was particularly important to me. because that meant that more kids who grew up like me could get a hold of it, you know, and that made me really happy. I was like, wow. And then a Kirkistar review, just woke up to that and I was like, bursting on my family in the shower. Guess what? And they're like, Kaela. I'm like, doesn't matter. I'll tell you. So, you know, I was basically a firecracker, you know, very excited. In many ways, it felt super surreal to get a Kirkistar, and then there was the Booklist Star, and then there was the Publisher's Weekly Star, like at the end of March. And I was like, almost feel like I'm pushing my luck, but I'm really excited about it. So that was the most important thing that I felt with those, was just this sense of validation. Not that you're not an author if you don't get things like that, because, you know, like you can have an amazing book and it, you know, doesn't get a star. But for a long time, this book was something I thought was too weird for people. You know, I was like, I don't know if anyone's gonna want to ride this train with me, you know. But to hear like some big trades really liking it just made me realize, oh yeah, maybe I'm not as on the weird train outside of everybody's imaginations as I thought I was, which was really encouraging. And I was very, very grateful to get that attention, especially because it just meant that maybe a few more people saw the book. And to me, the book is important, I guess.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. Yeah. Like personally, I'm excited for this book. I love reading books about mythology, folk tales, folklore. And I know a lot of our kids are too, like a lot of the tweens, because they're like, oh, I just finished Percy Jackson. What's next? And I'm like, well, let me tell you about Kaela Rivera. Yeah. So I'm excited for it.
Thank you.
And this, on to our next question here. In Cece, Rios, and the Desert of Souls, you write about desert spirits, magic, and fantastic creatures. Did any folk tales that you'd heard growing up inspire you? And did you have any fun research, or did you do any fun research?
Yes, both. Yes. So La Llorona appears in the story, for anybody who knows her. And there are actually entries in the glossary in the back of the book about all of the criaturas and folklore stories that appear. You also sometimes find little little notes about my opinions on them personally, along with them. So La Llorona, the weeping woman, is a story like my abuelo told me about his father, like a personal story about his father thinking that he'd seen La Llorona. Like he was walking between the cerros at night. There's like a little ravine, there was a path, and then there was a river that ran along the same path. He was walking with his burro, so his donkey, and he was traveling through this ravine at nighttime, which, you know, was scary. Super scary. But he's walking along. Now, La Llorona, the story is that she drowned her own children, and then she became a ghost that haunts water after doing so, which, you know, you can kind of see the karma there. But as he's walking through, he starts to see this white thing following him at the top of the water as he goes. And he's like, oh my gosh, La Llorona is here. She's on the river. And this thing with my family, at least, is we're like, if you don't look at it, it can't hurt you. So he was like, keep your eyes forward. La Llorona can't hurt you if you don't look at her, you know? So he's like, for like hours, he's walking with this like ghostly white image following his every step along the way. And then once he got to the end of the ravine, like he was starting to come out of it, he was like, okay, I can't stand it anymore. And he turned and looked, and she wasn't there. And he was like, oh my gosh, she's gone. Oh. And then as he starts to walk, he starts to realize he can still see it even when he's not looking at the river. And then he's like, wait a second, the moon was out and it had caught on the strings of his hat. And it had just been that the whole time. And that was like one of my favorite stories that Wano told me. I thought it was hilarious. And I'd always thought like the La Llorona story was interesting. It was one of the few ones that my dad had also brought up, about like he and his cousins would like go to like the nearest water, and they'd be like looking for her, you know, when's she gonna appear tonight, you know? So La Llorona is in the story. She's not in there as long as I would have liked to, but I couldn't find a way to use her another way. So, you know, maybe later I'll find another way to talk about La Llorona. I also researched a lot for the story, yeah, because again, it took me a long time to connect back to my Mexican heritage. So this was also part of the process of connecting back, as I just started looking up everything because I was excited. I also picked up David Bull's Mexican Bestiary. It's bilingual, so that's also really nice. And I like hunted through that, and I absolutely used the heck out of it while revising and writing Cece Rios. So yeah, a nice mixture of both, I guess.
Very cool.
And I'm just looking through the comments, and Angela is excited and says that my 15-year-old loves the sound of it.
Oh, yay! Yeah, I mean, its official thing is middle grade, but I do legitimately think that every age can read it, and not just because I'm the author.
Oh, yeah. No, absolutely. So. Absolutely. I mean, we're excited. Yeah. And we're totally adults.
Thank you. So thank you, Angela. I hope if she does get it, I hope she enjoys it. Yeah.
So the next question is a little bit about like how you kind of built the world of your story, because as you said, you use stories that you were told when you were younger. You used research into folk tales. So how did you kind of figure out how to mesh that all together, and even like for it to make sense together? Because every kind of story and myth, they're all different and they all have their own sort of like rules. So how did you go about that?
Yeah. So, I mean, revision is a lot of it, admittedly. I'm a little bit of I'm a very loose world builder at first. You know, like my first couple drafts, I'm just like, character.
Get all those
you know?
together.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't know. I would just put in whatever I want for the first like couple of drafts. I'm like, I like this, dump, you know. I like this too. You know, it's like a great Sunday, you know, but everyone else looks at it like, because it's got everything in it. So yeah, that's probably the number one rule is I have to like it and be excited about the idea. So everything in Cece Rios was something I was like, ooh, that's cool. My own rule of cool, I guess. Thereafter, it was important to me to cut out things that didn't make sense with the theme and incorporate things that made sense with the theme. So like pulling in those ideas, like there's brujas and there's different criaturas and stuff like that, but all of their stories in some way talk to inner strength. They talk to having healthy relationships and what it looks like when those go wrong, you know, like things like that. So all of them, I think, in some way unify into that great core. And if they didn't, that was sort of my rules. Like, okay, you can change the stories a little bit to make them fit the theme, but they have to fit the theme. Otherwise, you need to control yourself and move it out. You know, you can save it for later. I also think that, yeah, my editor was a huge part about making the fantasy stories like actually fit in and making particularly the rules of the world, because I love that sort of feeling where you're like, I don't really know how this world works. And you're like trying to put the clues together yourself in a story. Like I love jumping into TV shows like mid-season and being like, what's going on? You know? And my mom's like, you could go back to the first episode. I'm like, no, I want to figure out what's going on without any clues. So a strange way of enjoying story, but I do. So my editor was very much like that for a few revisions. My editor was like, okay, but you got to decide. You got to decide what the rules are. Even if you don't tell us what they are right away, we need to be able to see what they all are. And I was like, okay. So I did that. And I've actually really enjoyed how the refining process, how that ended up making the rules end up supporting the theme more. So they became part of each other, the world and the story, as well as the characters. It ended up making it richer than I had thought it would. So that makes me really happy with how it turned out.
That's great. And I think it ties into the next question. What is something about the entire process of writing and getting your book published that you did not expect?
Yeah, okay, yeah, that does tie in. So the two things, I would say the two things. So I've written about 10 books previous to this. I've just write a lot, I guess. But because of that, I also didn't stop and do revisions on most of those. Like I would do like 1 or 2, rounds of revision, but I was never a heavy reviser. And I had to learn how to be one. So once I finally got, once I got the publishing deal, and I was so excited to talk with Stephanie because I loved her thoughts. My editor, to clarify, Stephanie is my editor. As we moved through all of those different things, I did not realize how much better I needed to be at revising. I think that was a big one. I was like, oh no, you really have to buckle down and do this. So I had to like learn how to keep myself organized during revisions, which I had to start like making lists. I made myself little chapter cards. So I was like, this is what happens in this chapter. Remember. And I just had to become a significantly better reviser. Which I'm very glad about because increasing my craft is important to me, as well as being a good enough writer to live up to the kind of story I wanted to tell. So I was really grateful for that process, even though I was also like, oh, I guess I didn't realize I was unprepared for this, but I still think I pulled it off. So that's good too. And the second one, I think, would be I didn't realize how much things can change. I'll explain that with a little bit of a story. So when I got the call of that Harper wanted to make an offer on Cece, they said that they were like, we would love Cece, but we want it to be middle grade. And it was a young adult at the time. And I was like, oh, I didn't realize that they could make that sort of request right at the end. I mean, I was still excited about it, don't get me wrong, but I was also like, that is a really big change. And I'm going to have to think about that for a few days, actually. So I did. I talked with Stephanie to consider it, like what it would look like, what they meant when they said they wanted to make it a middle grade. I was like, do I have to get rid of all the fights? Because then it's not even going to be the same story, because I love fights. And I was like, it's kind of a big part of the story, all the fights. And they're like, no, you can keep that. I was like, okay. So going back and forth like that. And then the entire process of changing a story from young adult to middle grade is something I'd never done before. So that was a really enlightening experience too. That was definitely surprised me, but I'd always wanted to write middle grade because it has a huge special place in my heart. It was when I did most of my reading, like middle grade fantasy was like, that was my thing, And so I'd always wanted to. I just ended up getting to do it sooner than I thought, which was really surprising and really fun at the same time. And I really enjoy this book as a middle grade. I think it's better.
Wow, yeah, I did not know that they could request you to change like the age range for it. That's interesting.
Right? I was like, oh.
Yeah, me either.
Okay.
Oh, let me change everything up. Okay.
Yeah. At first I thought I was going to have to do the revision before they even offered or did the contract too. But they were like, no, as long as you agree to it, we'll just make that the first revision once everything's signed. And I was like,
it's a big revision.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a big revision. Yeah, it was.
Okay, our next question. So, have you always wanted to write children's fantasy? Now we know that you wanted to write young adult fantasy. And are there any other genres that you are interested in? And are there any other genres that you've written but haven't gotten published? That's what I'm curious about now.
That's a good question. So yeah, I did want to write young adult fantasy, and I also wanted to write middle grade fantasy. Fantasy is my first great love. But I will say that I have written other genres before. I've written one contemporary, and I loved the idea. I just I did not have the experience or the craft ability to pull off that kind of story at the time. But I loved the idea of like, it was this like crazy riddle thing with these codependent twins, and I loved it. Anyway. I've also written fantasy, light fantasy mostly. No, sorry, that's light sci-fi. I've obviously already written the fantasy. So I also love the idea of sci-fi. I just haven't quite landed on the sci-fi that I wrote. It was actually the one that first got my agent's attention. And then the next year I'd finished Cece, and she saw that in a contest too while she was looking at the other one. And then she was like, hey. And I was like, hey. So that ended up pretty well. Yeah, so I I've dabbled in a lot of things. I don't think contemporary, I just can't seem to make my books as interesting and contemporary as other contemporary. Like I love reading contemporary romance. I love reading contemporary like this kid lit, you know, it's super good. I really enjoy it. I just can't seem to make it mine as interesting yet. Maybe that'll change.
And speaking of your different writings and books, what is your writing process? And do you have to be in a specific environment or can you just kind of write anywhere?
That's an interesting question. So I don't think I need a specific place to write. It can help sometimes if it's not a super stressful environment, you know, that will generally help. It does help if it's nighttime. I'm a big night owl, so like I can work really hard on pushing out 2,000, 3,000 words in a day, and I'm like, ugh. But then it's like the moment the sun goes down, I'm like, I'm ready, you know, and I just can hammer out a bunch. So I don't know why, but it's like the moment the sun is down or setting, I'm like, it's time. My creative muse has awoken, you know. So that helps. I've written just about everywhere otherwise. I used to write in school, in high school. I used to write on lunch breaks. I've done that. I can write in my bedroom, on my bed, or at my desk, in here, or out at a cafe, you know, when there wasn't a pandemic. So I do enjoy writing in other places. I did revise a large portion of Cece in a Barnes and Noble cafe before the pandemic, and that was fun. Actually, I was like, I should do this again, and then the pandemic happened, and I was like, okay, maybe later. Yeah.
And I just have another quick add-on to that question is, do you listen to music? Like, do you have like a soundtrack for the mood, or I'm always curious.
It's a good question because
some people can't listen to anything.
So most of my books, I do have a few sort of what I would call like anchor point songs. There are a few songs that even they might be nothing like what I'm writing, but something about them helps me anchor to the feeling of the book or a feeling in a scene of the book that helps me ground me there again. So I have random songs like that. Cece was one of the rare books that I've written that there just wasn't one. It was like quiet was like the grounding anchor point. Except during revisions, I had to get one. I needed one to help me get back there. And hilariously, I just put on the Croods movie and I just let the title screen play with the owl, like what's the band name? Owl. For the dawn and the lights go on, shine, shine your way. That song, whatever. That song plays on the title screen, and I just like would pop that on. I'd sit down on my couch and I would revise. And for some reason, that was almost like a magic trick. I could do that and I could almost instantly get back into the book. And I was like, I don't know why I didn't listen to this movie when I was writing it. There's only a few things in it that even relate, you know, but for some reason it really helped. I think that might have had something to do with sometimes I get a feeling when I watch The Croods, even though it's like, I wouldn't say it's like the best movie ever, but I enjoy it, you know. It's something to do with the light and adventure that I really enjoy. So somehow it worked, you know. But yeah, each book kind of has its own different couple of anchor songs that help me be like, I can see the scene in my head now. Let's go.
I looked up the song. It's Shine Your Way by Owl City and Yuna.
There it is. Owl City. And I did not know Yuna was in it. Okay.
At least that one. Maybe it's a different version in the movie. Now we know.
Yeah, thank you. I was like, Owl. It's not Owl Crate. That's just on my mind, you know, but that's not it. Yeah.
So what did you enjoy most about writing Cece Rios and the Desert of Souls? Was it finishing it?
Yeah. I mean, that was enjoyable, yes. I was like, it's done. But no, I think it was just writing the characters. Like, I really love writing fight scenes. I grew up doing martial arts. I did Taekwondo. I did Kaipora, I did, that one was very short, admittedly, and mixed martial arts. So like I've always done some sort of combat art most of my life. So I enjoyed writing the fight scenes, but on a deep, enjoyable level, the quiet scenes are always my favorite. I think there's a scene where Cece and Coyote are sitting up in her loft room, and there's just candlelight, and she's just gotten home and she's wounded, lightly. And they start to share stories about how they feel. She's like, I don't really want to be a bruja. I don't want to hurt people. And he's like, I'm actually starting to believe you. And he's like, let me tell you a story about this other angry criatura we know and why he's angry, and how that starts to reveal things about both of them. And they come to this really beautiful place at the end where she's like, I would never make you go and do this. You can not do it if you want, but also please help me. And he's like, I can't believe you're giving me the choice. And I'm grateful, and I'm willingly doing this with you. And I'm like, oh, like that scene is probably one of my favorites still. I love those quiet scenes. I love writing those quiet scenes, which is also why during revisions, I usually have to cut them, because I make too many of them. My editor's like, you see these 3? Can you make them the same scene? I was like, yes, probably. So I love writing those quiet scenes where characters are coming closer together, where they're starting to align, or they're starting to become partners, or starting to understand each other. I think those are always my favorite scenes in any book, but I think in Cece that was a lot of what I loved writing about, was just watching these characters grow. I loved watching Cece get stronger, or realize that she was strong all along, and in embracing her inner strength, her kindness, her love, her devotion, she became even stronger. And watching Coyote grow hopeful and forgive himself, and all of the different other characters. I love watching that character growth. I think that's why I write, is because I'm like, I want to see it happen.
Man, you're really good at all these transitions, because the next question is, what do you hope readers take away from Cece Rios and the Desert of Souls?
No, I see what you mean now. So I think that there's a lot of things that I would love people to take away, because I think there's a lot of good things in there that I was like, oh, hey, once I'd written, I was like, oh, hey, that's a good thing. That surprised me. But I think the number one thing I'd want people to take away is that each of us have our own individual strengths, and we each have a special, beautiful goodness waiting inside of us, that no matter what is surrounding you, whether it's a voice in your head or other people who are trying to beat that part of you down or make you lose faith in that part of yourself, don't let that happen. Plant your feet in that place inside of you, in that good, excellent strength inside of you, and let yourself grow, because you can, and you can do it, and it's going to be beautiful. And I promise you, it's there no matter what. I think that's what I want people to take away from Cece.
I love that. I was just like, oh, I wish I could have made her big, like full screen. That sucks.
Yeah, that's really lovely.
So we're getting to the end of the questions, because it's almost the end of the chat. And this is the question that we always ask at the end, and we always ask all the authors. And no pressure if you can't think of a single one, or if you think of too many. So what is your favorite library memory?
Oh, there's so many good library memories. Okay, I'll wheedle it down. 2. Okay, I can wheedle it down probably to 2. And one of them is not even really a memory. It's just sort of the whole thing. But anyway, okay, one of them, there was when I lived in Montana, we were so far from everything that it was like, I lived there for like 2 years, and it was always snowy, and the snowy was too powdery to make a snowman, and I was very upset about everything. But then my mom took me to another town that actually had a library, because I don't think ours even had a library. I don't remember them being. Yeah, I think that's why we left. We needed to get a library. So we moved to, we didn't move. We went and visited another town, and we went to a library, and it had a pirate ship in the kids section. And I was like, whoa, after being so upset about living there, I was like, this place has a pirate ship and it's filled with books. And I was so excited. I like ran all up and down that pirate ship, and then I was like scooping up all of the books because I was like, this is my next week. As I'm sitting at the head of the pirate ship, like, I am now the pirate book woman, and all the other kids are like, but I was like, yes. So I loved that. That was super fun. And it was a huge pick me up when I needed one. And then two, growing up in Tennessee, I actually volunteered at the library in high school because we had a really small library, like super small, and I adored it, because I would sit in their armchairs just for hours, like as my mom was also reading in the armchair across from me, and my little sister was playing with the blocks. It was fabulous. So I loved it even when it was small. But then it got a huge renovation because of somebody donated, and then it was like this 2-story, like one of the best buildings in the city, and I was like, woo! And I volunteered after it had finished, like, and it was reopened and everything. And I just loved being there. Like, I loved shelving all of the books. I loved how quiet it was. I loved like sitting down and meeting the librarians, and it was so cute because they like taught me how to do the stuff. I was like, I could check in the books, and they let me check someone out, and I was like, this is so fun being on the other side of the desk, like a whole world had opened up that like I was having a big adventure like the whole time. I mean, it looked good on like my college applications, but honestly, all of like the reward was just having done it because it was so fun. I was like, man, sometimes I still wish I had time to just go volunteer at the library, put the books on the shelf, go hunt for that book no one can find, That was, yeah, those are some of my favorite library memories.
I love it. I love hearing those.
Awesome.
And Angela says that you are awesome.
Aw, thanks, Angela.
All right. So, what is next for you? What do we have to look forward to?
Yeah. Okay. So I can't say like this is an official contract or anything like that. But I am in my personal Word document writing a sequel for Cece. So I'm excited for it, and we are on the way of making it official. Just can't say anything yet exactly. So take this as very wishy-washy hypothetical, but other than that, I do have a young adult fantasy planned. Pretty sure this one won't be turned into middle grade. And it's all about flower magic. Kind of follows the idea of the Victorian language of flowers mixed with Aztec ancient kingdom, and a blood bond with flowers, and the attempt to overthrow the Aztec kingdom. So this is a general pitch idea, still in revisions, but I'm excited for it.
I'm excited too. I am sold.
Perfect. I'll tell you when it's out.
Okay. Yes. And where can readers find you, and where can they get your books?
Yes. Okay. So you can find me mostly on Twitter and on Instagram. On Instagram, you'll see that I'll also do sketches of characters. I'll do little brainstorming things. You can probably see a lot more behind the scenes of the actual stories themselves there. And that is at Kaela Cub. It's my name with bear cub, but not the bear part, just Kaela Cub. And then on Twitter, you'll see a lot more of like industry updates. Like if Cece gets a sequel, you'll see it announced there. If you'll see other like random little clips there, very industry focused kind of stuff. But you'll hear my everyday thoughts. You'll also see pictures of me signing stuff, probably that kind of thing. And you can find me there at at Kaela_Rivera_ because Kaela Rivera was taken. You can also find me on my website. Forgot, I have a website, KaelaRivera.com. Very simple. And I love to receive fan art if anybody's ever interested in that. And I will be making a tab on my website for featuring that soon. So.
Yes, and for anyone watching now or watching later when this is recorded, I have pasted the website and the direct link to all the social media stuff right in there, so you can just click it and go right to the website and see all the info.
Thank you.
And buy the book.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I forgot my book. That's available just about everywhere. So it should be, it's an audiobook, simultaneous audiobook. So you can get that on Audible if you love that. Again, Almari Guerra did such a good job. And it's on Amazon. It's on most indie bookstores, Mist Galaxy. That's the one you can get it from here. So yeah, if you look just about anywhere, it should be there.
Yay!
Thanks
So
for being
thank
interested.
you. So yeah. Yes, buy the book. Thank you so much for joining us, for being here, for talking with us. Thank you to the viewers. Thank you to my coworker Kristine for joining me on this journey. And yes, again, reminding everyone that you can order the book from Mysterious Galaxy, and that link is also in the description of the video. So it's very convenient.
Yay!
If you feel like ordering it.
Thank you all so much for having me, and thank you everybody who's watching or has watched or will watch for coming.
And if you're interested in more free online programming like this, don't forget to check out our Facebook events to see all the fun and free digital events we have planned.
Yes, and we hope to see you back here on Facebook Live Saturday, April 24th at 2 p.m. for our next author chat with Sam Subity, author of The Last Shadow Warrior. And if you get a chance, please fill out our very short, very quick, only 3-question event survey that is in the event description and in the chat. So thank you again for joining us. Thank you for those who will watch this later. We hope you enjoyed it, and we hope you have a great day.
Thank you. Adios.